welcome to Nacho Sushi. Today I'm going to do a Q&A. I had a comment from J Bay 2608, and it reads, how often would one have to do a water change for a 55-gallon tank with 5 to 6 discus in it? Simple enough question, or is it? I'm going to go over a list of things that I think are important to keeping good, healthy fish, getting them to grow big and grow fast. The first thing you'll have to think about is filtration, size of filtration, and the type of filtration. There are many types of filters you could use depending on your needs. A list of filters are sponge filters, power filters, canister filters, diatom filters, trickle filters, algae filters, baffle filters, and I'm sure there's still more that I'm not mentioning here. The sponge filter is probably the easiest filter, the least amount of maintenance, and there's no moving parts on a sponge filter. It simply lifts the water using air, and then the water that's lifted sucks in more water behind it through a sponge, and the sponge traps your debris, your waste, your food, and it also holds good bacteria in it, which will pull out the nitrogens and nitrates and, break down the ammonia in the water and help your fish survive. Because now I just use a sponge filter. They're a little easier to clean. There's nothing that you have to keep buying, like the cartridges. You have to refresh those and buy new ones. With the sponge filter, you just scrub it off real well, and that's it. I use 2 sponge filters in here. I have 2 large fish. I clean the sponge filters as needed. When I notice that they're dirty, I'll do a water change and clean the filters at the same time. This 10-gallon tank back here has probably about 60 guppies in it, 50 to 60 guppies. I run 1 sponge filter in there and I clean it out when it gets dirty, maybe twice a month. So you have 60 fish in a 10-gallon that are 1 inch. 2 fish in a 30-gallon, which are about 5 inches. So, I clean this out several times a month. Filtration is very important to keeping particles out of the water that could cause your fish harm. They also hold your good bacteria to keep your nitrogen cycle going. Depending on what type of filtration you're running, how often you're maintaining your filtration system, size of the tank, size of the fish, that's all going to play into what type of filtration you need. Next thing you're going to want to think about is what type of food you're feeding, how often you're feeding, and are you overfeeding. If you're feeding a type of food that spreads out through the tank, if it's like a homemade mix or something and it gets your whole tank dirty, you'll probably want to go ahead and change your water out, get that cleaned up. Anything that sits there and rots is not good. If you're overfeeding, there's going to be food stuck in corners, and it's going to foul up your water. The water's going to start to stink. If you're keeping discus, you're probably feeding them some type of meat. So that meat will start to rot real fast. Your bacteria counts will shoot up. So just make sure you're not overfeeding your fish. Make sure you're feeding them with good food that doesn't foul up your water. And depending on what type of tank setup you have, if you have a planted tank that's just full of plants, sticks, stuff like that, food's going to get stuck in those areas. Bacteria is going to grow in those areas, and you're going to have a larger problem. And then if you have a rock bottom tank with just rocks, maybe a few plants and some decorations, you'll have less of a problem, but still all the food will go down in between those rocks. You'll start growing bacteria, and you'll have to clean more often. If you have a bare bottom tank, like I'm running on these tanks, it's a little bit easier to do maintenance. It's easier because you can get the tank cleaner. You're still going to have the same amount of buildup in the same amount of time. I'd say a bare bottom, depending on how often you're feeding, what type of filtration you're using, a bare bottom you may have to clean your tank more because there will be more consider are tank mates. Some types of fish and crustaceans can help keep your tank cleaner overall. If you have like little ghost shrimp, they'll go and clean up the waste food. Placostomus or your algae eaters will go around and help keep your tank clean. But more fish in the tank adds to the ammonia and the bio load in your tank, which you'll have to do a water change soon. So the comment asks, how often would you have to do a water change if you had 5 discus and a 55-gallon tank? That leads back to all the stuff I said before, how often you're feeding, what type of filtration you have, you have tank mates, stuff like that. If they're adult discus, you're going to have to change the water more. The larger the fish, the more waste they produce, the more food you're putting in there, the more strain they're putting on your system. So if you have 5 baby discus in a 55-gallon tank, it may take you a week and a half to 2 weeks before you need to change the water out. 2-inch fish, isn't going to make that big of a mess. They're not going to produce that much ammonia in the water. So you could go longer in between water changes. Now, as that fish grows and gets to full adult size, and you have 5 of them in a 55-gallon tank, you're going to have to adjust to that and do more frequent water changes because they're going to be producing more waste. You're going to be feeding them more. So you'll have to step up the water changes, step up your filtration, make sure you're monitoring how much you're feeding your fish. One of the best tools you could have is this right here, a water test kit. I got this one at my local pet store. This is a API freshwater master test kit. You can probably get this on Amazon or maybe you can order it straight from the company. But it gives you a nice little chart inside. It tells you how to use the test kit. On the back, it shows you the different readings you'll get. This one tests for pH, high pH, ammonia, nitrates, and nitrites. So if your test is turning color like this bottom color down here, you need to go ahead and do at least a 50% water change. Check out my video on 50% water changes. I even test my tap water to see if it's reading anything like this. If you're getting well water, it might have nitrates and nitrites in there from runoff from farms, something like that. So you want to test your water before you're even putting it in your tank. Test the pH, get your pH at the right levels, and just make sure there's no ammonia. There shouldn't be ammonia in your tap water. There shouldn't be nitrates or nitrites in your tap water for that matter. Test your water first, see what your baseline is. This kit costs $30. I've had it as long as I've had these fish, coming up on 2 years. The bottles are practically full. Once I was getting started, and what you should do if you're just getting started is test often. Test every single day. You only use a couple drops of this. You're not going to run out. I'm sure these bottles would last you, hundreds and hundreds of water tests. So just test your water often. That brings me to my next thing is consistency. Stay consistent with your water changes so that way you know how you have to adjust. So if you change the water on a Friday, change it every single Friday, test your water in between, you'll see the levels start to spike and get maybe higher on the ammonia, higher on the nitrates and nitrites. You can catch it before it becomes a problem. So test frequently, stay consistent. That's what's going to keep your fish growing fast, is good clean water all the time. Low toxin levels all the time. Feed them heavily, but don't overfeed them to where there's food left sitting on the tank rotting. When you do a water change, do the same amount. Have your water parameters the same before you put it into the tank. If you want to see how to prepare your water, go ahead and watch my video on how to make ready water. So that way you know exactly what you're putting into your tank. You're not just leaving it up to your tap. I have my water setting for at least 24 hours in advance. I can go ahead and test it at that point. also had a question from Young Tank. He said, do you use RO water, which is reverse osmosis water? I stopped using that probably 8 months ago. After doing some research, I realized it's not exactly necessary. Discus that are bred in captivity are used to different water conditions than your wild discus. I went through a couple different phases. I weaned them off of RO water and got them onto tap water, and they did fine. Then I weaned them from using my Discus Buffer to using no Discus Buffer and just using the water that came out of my tap at a pH level of about 7.4 roughly. And now I'm back to using Discus Buffer, and keeping their pH level at about 6.4. Is it making a difference? I don't know. I may go back to using no Discus Buffer, which will cost you less money, less chemicals you have to buy. Better. To answer the question, I do not use RO water. I just use tap water and add chemicals to it. Watch my video on how to make ready water if you want to know more about that. So each situation is different. You're just going to have to look at the type of filtration you're running, how often you're maintenancing it, the type of food you're giving them, and how much you're giving them. Do you have tank mates or helper fish? Then you have to think about the size of the fish. As they grow, you'll have to adjust. Test your water. Test it often. Make sure you're using your test kit correctly. And stay consistent. Stay up on your water changes. It can really get away from you, and then you might have to do 2 or 3 50% water changes just to get back on track. So stay on top of it, stay consistent, and have fun.